Hello, welcome to Econometrics Melody. In this tutorial, we'll deal with the commands label, encode, and recode. These commands are very useful in labeling and coding the data. Let's begin with this menu Stata interface active each time. Press Ctrl 8 for activating data editor and Ctrl 9 for activating do file. So let us create our data and then save it with the appropriate name. So this is our data set. It contains the numeric as well as a string variable. Now let us see our command label. If we describe this, you'll see we don't have any label for the variables, neither do we have the label for the data set. So let me increase this a little bit, and then now let me label the data. So the syntax is we write label data and followed by the label name. So let us label our data as label tutorial in this case, and let us describe this, and you see the differences. Now we have this label tutorial. This is the label of data, and again we don't have any label for the variables or values. Now let us label the variables. So the syntax is you will have to specify label and then specify a word called variable followed by the variable name and its appropriate label. So these are the variables that we have, and I'm going to label it, and let me describe it. Now you see the changes. The variables, they have some label. So expenses of people for variable A, and then income of people for variable B. So this is the syntax. You need to write label variable, specify the word called variable, and then specify the variable name and appropriate variable. Now let us label the values. So how does it work? First of all, we'll have to prepare the label, then after we'll have to tag this label to this variable. So we are going to, this is the syntax, we'll have to write label define and then any label name. So this label name GB, good, bad, it contains for any value 0, the label is bad. For any value 1, it's again bad. For any value 2, it's good. So let us define and prepare this label. So we have defined this label for the values, and now let us tag this label to the appropriate variable. In this case, we write the syntax label values and the variable C. To the variable C, we are going to tag this label GB, and you will see these changes in the variable C. If you focus on this variable C, you see these changes. For every 0 and 1, we specify bad, and for every 2, we have good. Similarly, let us repeat this process for other variables D and E. These are the categorical variables. The syntax is same, and the process of working, it's again the same. We write label define this label called PL, and for its values assign the appropriate labels. Then after, you tag this label to the appropriate variable using this command label values. Now let us see how many labels that have we defined or used in this data. So this is going to be displayed by the function or by the syntax label dir. So these are the 3 labels that we have used: food, people, and GB. You can list the values by using this command called label list. So this is equivalent to typing label list underscore all. So all the labels present and its values along with its label, they are displayed. And if you want some particular labels only to be displayed, is in our case food and people, the label food and people will only be displayed. This is very simple. Now let us copy the labels. So we have food, the label food. So we use this command label copy, so the existing label and the new label you want it to be copied to. So food will be copied to receip, and if it's an existing label, we replace it. Now let us label list. See, this food is copied to this recipe, so they are one and the same, equal. Now let us again copy the label people to this recipe and see what happens. Now see, the recipe is changed, is copied, the labels are copied from this PL place. This is simple. If you want to drop, if you don't want any label, so if you want to drop it from, then you will have to write label drop followed by the label that you want to drop. And if you see, now we don't have the label called recipe because we have dropped it here. Now let us try to change some of the labels. If we want to add, let us say the variable C, it contains the value 0, 1 and 2. 0 and 1 for bad and 2 is for good. So if you replace the variables C, sum of the observation of variable C, by -1, now this -1 is new for this label because GB contains only good and bad. So if you want to add the label to this value -1, then you will have to again define label, define GB. For -1 it's the appropriate label, and you will have to specify add, and you see the changes. Now let us, if we in the label GB we do have 1 is for bad, but if you simply want to change it or overwrite it by writing 1 for low for 1, and if you write this command add, this won't add because add works only to add new values. We have 1 already, so this does not work. And if you want to make such changes, then you will have to specify the option called modify. Let us say for 1 and 2 in the GB, the label GB, we want to replace it by the label fine and wow respectively. So if you specify this option called modify, you see fine and wow. So if you label list, so we have modified this 1 and 2, fine and wow. Now if you want to delete some of the label or values, then you'll have to specify modify, and for the values that you want to delete, you should simply write nothing, only the quote unquote. Okay, so now you see for this one we have deleted it. Now if you want to replace, then value that we specify is written only minus, in this case only -1, and its label is written. Other, they are replaced, they don't exist actually. You see only this Oweful is for -1. If you see it here, this is written. Others, they are actually deleted. So this is clear in this label list GB. You see only for the value -1 we have Oweful. Other values and labels are deleted. So if you want to make changes using replace, you'll have to specify for -1 you write Oweful, then you'll have to specify all other values and labels. So this will again fix our problem. Label dir, it will display all the labels, names, and label list will display the names as well as values. Now let us see label book. Label book will help you provide a detailed information about the labels. So if you write label book will display the detailed information of all the labels that we are working. So we have this label called PL for place, and then we have this information for the label GB good and bad, and we have another information for the label food, food. They are displayed in the alphabetical order: F food, G GB, and PL per place. GB in alphabetical order. If you specify label book and underscore all, this is equivalent to specifying only label book. All the existing labels are displayed with great details. So these are the details. You can display it in a nice way if you extend this. Let me again run this. So this is the information in a nice format. You can see this for variables, what are its definition, and so on. And if you want to label book the particular label, then you can specify them. Now let us, sometimes in some cases we want to display the label as well as its value. Okay, so we have a very good command for that. Now let us see the, so when we table it, we see only this labels. Okay, the values are not displayed, but in some cases along with the label you want to display its value as well. So in that case we have this command called numlabel add, and this is depicted in this variable CDE. Once I run this, you see now the label is the combination of value along with its label. Now if we label list and if we table it, both the value along with its label are displayed. This is very useful. After specifying numlabel add, if you want to remove that, you will have to write numlabel remove, and you see we have removed the number labels. We can customize the display of the numbers in the label. So here we use the option called mask, and we are going to enclose the numbers or display the numbers or the values within this big bracket. You see, and if you table it, you'll get the results in the similar format. So after this, once you have used this mask, if you write numlabel remove, it will not remove it. So be careful in using this. Now we'll have to bear with this format. Okay, now let us use this command. Let us preserve this. So what does the uselabel do? Uselabel will make a data set of the labels. You see, we have 3 labels: food, GB, and PL, which is for place. These are the values and these are the labels. Now let me restore our data back. Now let us go to our next command called encode. This will generate a code for the string variables. Let us drop the variables A and D. And if we table, here F is the string variable. If you table it, you will see him and US for 12 and 15. Now let me encode F and generate a variable called FE. So these are the labels. Now the string variables, the string values, they are converted into label, and its values starts from 1. You see him and US. Now if you table it, label list, you see 1 for him and 2 for US, and the encode, it creates the code beginning from 1. Now let me drop FE, and we can manipulate that also. Label drop FE. We don't have any label called FE now. Now label define, let us label define the label FE, and 0 should indicate US. Okay, so this is defined. Now if we initialize this label, now we encode FE and generate, we encode EF, the variable EF, and we generate EFE, but the label, it should take the values from the label we have defined here. 0 should be US, and remaining, actually it should begin with 0. So if 0 is US, then ultimately 1 should be EF, him. So you see, we have manipulated this. Now 0 for US and 1 for him. This is very simple. Now let us decode it. Let us trace our steps back. We have decoded it. Now female. Now if you compare, so if you decode it, so this FED is after decoding this label. So we will need to compare whether F and FED, whether they are same or different. Now let us compare F and FED. They are one and the same. See, exact match for how many? 27 observation. F equals to FED. Now let us drop FED. We don't need this anymore. Let us again decode FE, and how many number of strings do you want to display? Here we want to display only one string, so only the initial letters will be displayed. Let us compress this and format it. This is very simple and intuitive. Let us now move to our next command, recode. This is very useful in coding and labeling. Let us sort B, and then let us replace B with the missing values, some of the missing values. So observation 25 to 27 are missing, and let us recode B. We are going to recode B and generate new variable. So based on this rule, so we recode B. So every number between 25 to 197, we want the code H0, and 198, and between 244 to 360, it should be coded as 1. Any number between 361 and 550 should be coded as 2, inclusive. So the X is borderlines, inclusive of the borderlines, and any number except these numbers from here to here, any non-missing number, that should be coded with 3, and the missing number should be coded with 4, and a variable called BR should be generated. You see. Now let us label list. So we have this label values BR is equals to food. So for this BR, we are going to use this label, and you see. And now let us label them. So 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is fine. Now we can swap as well. So let us use this. So in place of 0, so this in place of 0 we have swapped it with 3. In place of 1 we have swapped it with 2. In place of 2 we have swapped it with 1. and in place of 3 we have swapped it to 4. In place of 4 we have swapped it with 0 and generated a variable called PS. We have labeled this with the label called food. This is very simple. So 0 is equals to 3. So in place of any 0 in this variable br, we want to code it by 3. So we are swapping the codes. These are also very useful. Now let us drop bs and again try some variation. So recode br is equals to 1 2. So 1 is equals to 2. In place of 1 we want to write 2, and others we don't make any change, and we generate a variable called bs. And you see, simply in place of 1 we will have 2, in place of 1 we will have 2, and others they don't change. 3 4. Now let us again drop bs. We can collapse the code. So in place of 0 and 1 in the variable br, so 0 and 1 should be replaced by 0, 2 2 3 and 4 should be replaced by 1. So we'll have only two codes, 0 and 1, based on this rule. And if you say the new variable, you can compare it, and we have replaced it with a fe. So this is up to here, this is 0 and this is 1. If you look at it, so up to 0 and 1 we have one code, and the remaining from 2 to 4 we have this code. This is also very simple and useful tool. This is really very useful tool. Now let us drop c and bs if possible. Yes, and then sort e and br, and then again recode it following this rule. Okay, in place of 0 it equals to, we want to write it 1, and so on. And pre means we'll have to recode e and br, both of them will be recoded following this rule. And the prefix yes, the two variables will be generated, one will be yes e, another will be yes br, following this rule, and we will test if there is some overlapping in the code. Let us run this and let us label this. You will get our results, and let us order this for our simplicity understanding. Now if you see this code, in place of 0 we have created yes e with this code 1. In place of 1 we have this replaced by the code 2. In place of 2 we have replaced by 3. In place of 3 by 4, and in place of 4 by 0. Same is the case with this variable called br. For br we have, with this prefix we have generated a new variable in place of 0 1. So let us sort this, and again the same rule is followed. In place of 0 1, in place of 1 2, in place of 2 3, in place of 3 4, in place of 4 it's 0. This is very useful. So let us drop yes e and yes br and sort ebr, and label define z equals to -1 modify. So we are deleting -1 from here. Okay, so in place of gb we are deleting this -1. Now let us recode e and br. So 0, in place of 0 and 1 in the existing variables e and br, we are going to replace it with 0 and assign a value label for this value 0 is money. Anything, any number between 2 and 3, including 2 and 3, will be coded as 1, and that 1 will be labeled by the word kind. 4 equals to 2, any value with the code 4 should be replaced by 2, and this 2 will be labeled as matter, and the prefix yes e and yes br will be generated, two variables, and we'll test and label gb. We are going to label these values by the word called gb. So you see, this is very simple. And let us again label list, and we will sort and see this. You see, now gb, previously it was good and bad, now it's money, kind, and matter. So we have coded as well as labeled these variables. This is very useful. Recode, this part is very useful. Now let us order b and anything that ends with e and r. So 0, if you look here, so you get 0. So 0 and 1 we have replaced it by the value 0. So this 0 and 1 we have replaced it with 0. Now you see here up to this, so 2 3, so 0 1 replaced with 0, 2 and 3 is replaced with 1, and 4 is replaced with 2. And let us sort b or nsb, and we'll get For 0 and 1 we have 0, for 2 and 3 we have coded as 1, for 4 we have coded as 2, and their label values has also, or label has also changed from good and bad to money, kind and matter. This is very useful for us. Now let us drop anything that begins with ES and let us sort it with the variable B, and let us order B, anything that begins with B. Now let us recode again. For every 0 we write 1, for every 1 we write 0, if based on this condition, okay, if B is less than 300. So this coding will be valid only for if B is less than 300, and we generate BM. Let us see what happens. So for those observations that does not qualify this condition, that will generate a missing values, and we have a remedy for that as well. So if you write copy after this, then other variables or other observations will be copied the way it is. So the same case, let us recode BR for every 0 equals to 1, 1 equals to 0, and based on this condition, for every observation for which the value is less than 300, and for those remaining observations that does not satisfy this condition, the same corresponding value will be copied and labeled. You'll see. So this is the difference. So BM and BMC, this is the difference, and here we have not specified the option called copy, that is why we've got this missing value. And so DB summarize, if you run this, a dialog box will appear for summarizing, and you can manipulate this. You can select the variables from here and you can use this summarize. If you want to use your regression command using a dialog box, then you can again write db regress. Now you can select your dependent variable and all these independent variables and treatment of constant. How do you want to treat the constant, and you can play with this. Okay, similarly, if you want to draw a time series line using a dialog box, and you can execute this command or invoke this command using db as a db and followed by this. This is very simple. Select your variables and you can plot it. Please take your time in understanding this. This is it for this tutorial. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much, Econometrics Melody.